All right, Latin 2. It'd be good for you guys to review reading 15, which is due today, and it's fairly easy. Hopefully that was not too painful for you. So if you want, you guys could work through that a little bit. All right, page 258, relative clauses of purpose. And these are like the ut purpose clauses, but instead we're using the relative pronoun, which came up here in the lesson 24 at the beginning of the chapter. And so if you need to, qui, que, quo, you can review that, have that open. So let's look at this first sentence. Equites misit qui concilia cognoscerunt. So he sent, and again, it's really important for you guys to know the difference between misi and misera. Misi is a verb from mito. Misera is an adjective that means miserable or wretched. So please don't confuse those. So when you see miserunt, that is not an adjective. That does not mean miserable. It means they sent. Okay, so make sure you understand that. So misit, parse that for me. What's the number? It's singular, so it means he sent the cavalry, right? Not the cavalry sent, or not the cavalry were sent. It's not a passive verb, it's an active verb. He sent the cavalry. Who should learn the plans in order that they might learn the plans? Cognoscerent, what tense is that? It's an imperfect subjunctive. Remember, when you use a secondary tense in the main clause, you have to use a imperfect subjunctive in the purpose clause. If you use a primary tense, which again is present or future perfect, you're going to use present tense subjunctive. So this is an imperfect tense subjunctive because you used a perfect tense. You used a past tense, perfect, imperfect, pluperfect in the main clause. Okay? So, in other words, this is just another way to express a purpose clause. We're going to learn yet another way at the end of this chapter with the pronoun quo. But anyway, here it is with a relative clause. Exception. A relative clause of purpose cannot be used when the relative pronoun would have to agree with the subject of an active main verb. Okay, so in other words, this has to do with having a different subject in the purpose clause than you do in the main clause. If you have the same subject, you're going to use ut, right? Relative clause may be used to express purpose, and so it's subjunctive. All right, new vocabulary. You're going to have a vocabulary quiz on Friday on lessons 22 through 24, so make sure you not only learn these, but the ones at the end of the chapter. There's about 50 words, and you're going to have to know 40 of them. So, deduco. So sometimes we have verbs like duco, and you add a preposition kind of to intensify it. De means away from, so this not only means lead, but lead away. It kind of uses the preposition to give direction to the verb. Cognosco, learn, and that's kind of related to the Greek verb gnosko, right? Which means I know. Cognosco, cognovi. So make sure you understand that third part is quite a bit different. The SC disappears and is replaced by a V. Nuntius, and you can kind of see how this verb and this noun are related. Okay. Nuntius is a messenger. Natura comes directly into English as nature. Que is a conjunction that is placed at the end of the second noun in a pair of nouns. Okay, so you can see below the ending, Maria Sanctique, Maria Sanctique Dei, Mary and the Saints of God. Senatus Populusque Romanus, there's the famous SPQR. So the Q is the que that's attached to Romanus, the Senate and people of Rome, or the Roman people and Senate. So whenever the Roman armies would march, there would be an SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus. And it's basically the equivalent of USA, right? SPQR is just another way of identifying the Roman Republic, but then also the Roman Empire. And you're learning about that in your history class. Okay. So again, as it says here on 259, you've now learned 3 words for and: et, atque, which again is a more intensive verb, and so, and que, joined. There's a famous difference between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Western Church in the Nicene Creed. Okay, the Nicene Creed originally says that the Spirit proceeds from the Father. And in the Western Church, they added the word, patrio filioque, so it proceeds from the Father and the Son. It's called the filioque clause, and it's using this word qua with filio to seek to clarify that the Spirit proceeds eternally from the Son as well as from the Father. All right, so your homework. So again, I want you to use 274. We need to keep reviewing these ablatives and name the secondary tenses. So again, there's a little grammar review here. And then we're going to do exercise 272. And again, study for the quiz on Friday. So let's look at number 1 here. And again, we're going to have this relative purpose clause, and several of these are going to have these relative purpose clause. And again, part of what it means is that you're going to change the subject in the purpose clause to be different from the the subject of the main clause. Okay, that's a rule that you need to remember. Again, that's the rule on page 258 at the bottom. All right, hoste servum in castra Caesaris miserunt. Again, that's a verb, that's not an adjective. Miserunt qui Caecilia eius cognosceret. All right, so again, take everything before qui and do that first. Take everything before the relative clause and solve that first. All right, so who can tell us what the verb is in the main clause? Miserunt, which is what number, tense, person? It's third plural, right? Und, but it's perfect tense, erunt, and it means, from mito, they sent. Well, who sent? Can we identify a subject? Well, again, we usually go to the first word in the sentence to see if that's a nominative word, and it is a nominative plural. So the enemy sent. So now, what did they send, or who did they send? The enemy sent the slave in castra Caesaris. Now, some of you are going to say, well, in the camp. No, don't say that. This is in plus the accusative, into the camp of Caesar, into Caesar's camp, in order that he, remember, you got to change the subject, can't be the subject of the main clause because we're using a relative pronoun here. Qui agrees with servum, in order that he might know concilia eius. What is eius? What part of speech is that? It's a personal pronoun, genitive singular, right? And again, open up to your pronouns and make sure you know these third person, first person, second person pronouns. A lot of you are missing you. Not only are you you're confusing miserunt with misera, the verb with the adjective, you're also often confusing nobis with nobilis. Nobis is a pronoun, a first person plural pronoun. Nobilis is an adjective. Okay, you've got to make sure that you are getting the distinction. Nobilis is always going to have an L in it. Nobis is never going to have an L in it. Okay, so anyway, in order that he, the servant, might discover his plan. Whose plan? Caesar's plan. It's not the servant's plan. The servant already knows his plan. He's going into the camp. He's sneaking into the camp in order to find out the Caesar's plan. And of course, they don't mind sending the slave in there because they don't mind if the slave gets killed. So the enemy's not necessarily going in himself. Also, don't forget to translate hostes as a singular in English, even though it's usually always plural in Latin. We use the word enemy as a collective singular. And you can even translate English verbs, you know, the enemy are on the hills, right? Even though it's a singular, it's a collective singular, like the word deer. The deer are on the hills. A deer is on the hill, the deer are on the hill. So make sure you understand that collective singular sense. It's like the word army, exercitus. The army is on the hill, or you could even say the army are on the hill, since it's a collection of soldiers. All right, so that's number one. I would like you to work on number, and again, if you're going to diagram this, you're going to get to that object. So you're going to have hostes, you're going to have a long line, you're going to have your verb, then you're going to have a short line that goes down to the horizontal line. You're going to put the slave there, servum, and then you're going to draw dot, 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 dot down to the relative clause. So you can see that here in page 246. But again, because with a relative purpose clause, you're always going to change subjects. You're never going to have that dot, dot, dot coming down from the subject of the main clause. It's always going to be coming down from an object. Okay, so it's got to be something after the verb in the predicate clause. Okay, all right, so that is your homework. If anyone would like some extra credit, you could do a paragraph from reading 16. Then we're going to finish up lesson 24 on Thursday with section 4, and you're going to have a quiz on Friday. And then, Lord willing, I will see you next week on lesson 25 as we begin unit 7. All right, God bless. Have a great day.